Good morning, children. How are you today? Doing fine? Still wearing your face masks? Never forget them, right? So, how did you like the first 3 chapters? Before we move on to chapter number 4, let me just remind you of the book cover of The Little Prince. That's a portrait. And these are the characters, so far at least. This is a picture of the author when he was a child. That's the scary boa constrictor. Hopefully we will get rid of him today. I can't stand him any longer. Can't even stand the sight of him. That's the Little Prince, a much more comforting sight. The Little Prince, the protagonist. Remember, protagonist means the most important character in the story. And that's sheep. The sheep that the author drew for the Little Prince. And today, hopefully, we will befriend a new character, a Turkish astronomer. Now, what does Turkish mean? Well, you know, Turkish is an adjective related to Turkey. Turkey is a nation, so Turkish means somebody coming from Turkey. But what does astronomer mean? An astronomer is a scientist who observes stars, planets, moons, comets and galaxies, all sorts of astronomical objects. Now, it sounds so fascinating, doesn't it? But remember, if you want to become an astronomer, if you are contemplating it, remember that you must devote yourself to study math and English too. So, it's not that easy. It's not just about looking at the sky. Huh? It's not at all so romantic. But it's fascinating, I think. Anyway, what happened in chapter number 3? When this little boy, whom the narrator begins to call the Little Prince, learns that the narrator dropped down from the sky in his airplane, he reveals that he too came from the sky. The narrator deduces that the boy is from another planet. When the narrator offers to draw him a string he can use to tie the sheep, the Little Prince says that the place he comes from is very small. The sheep cannot get lost there. The setting hasn't changed. It's always the Sahara Desert. And now, chapter 4. I had thus learned a second fact of great importance. This was that the planet the Little Prince came from was scarcely any larger than a house. It was very small, but that did not really surprise me much. I knew very well that in addition to the great planets, such as the Earth, Jupiter, Mars, Venus, to which we have given names, there are also hundreds of others, some of which are so small that one has a hard time seeing through the telescope. When an astronomer discovers one of these, he does not give it a name, but only a number. He might call it, for example, asteroid 325. Now, isn't that a little bit sad? I think it is. I prefer names to numbers. It's more romantic, isn't it? Anyway, that's a picture of the Little Prince's asteroid, B612. I have serious reason to believe that the planet from which the Little Prince came is the asteroid known as B612. This asteroid has only once been seen through the telescope. That was by a Turkish astronomer in 1909. So what the author is giving us here is an item of news, a real piece of historical news that really happened. this Turkish astronomer looking into the telescope really existed. On making his discovery, the astronomer had presented it to the International Astronomical Congress in a great demonstration. But he was in Turkish costume, and so nobody would believe what he said. Grown-ups are like that. See? This picture shows the same person. It's not two different people. It's the same person. At the top of the picture, you can see the Turkish astronomer wearing a Turkish costume with a tarbush, I think it's called in Arabic, the red head cover. So in the top picture, the astronomer is showing to his fellow scientists his discovery. He had just made a tremendous breakthrough, a very important discovery. He had discovered a new asteroid, but nobody believed him. Why? Because he was wearing what some of his fellow scientists thought was an outlandish costume, a strange costume. So, because nobody believed him, the astronomer decided to change his costume, and a few years later, by law, he was made to wear a three-piece European suit, looking very serious. So now everybody believed him, just because he had changed clothes. But is that right? Should we pay attention to appearances, which means to the way somebody looks like, or to what he or she are saying? Fortunately, however, for the reputation of asteroid B612, a Turkish dictator made a law that his subjects, under pain of death, should change to European costume. So, in 1920, the astronomer gave his demonstration all over again, dressed with impressive style and elegance. And this time, everybody accepted his report. See? Because people are so interested in appearances. If I have told you these details about the asteroid and made a note of its number for you, it is on account of the grown-ups and their ways. When you tell them that you have made a new friend, they never ask you any questions about essential matters. They never say to you, "What does his voice sound like? What games does he love best? Does he collect butterflies?" Instead, they demand, "How old is he? How many brothers does he have? How much does he weigh? And how much money does his father make?" Only from these figures do they think they have learned anything about him. If you were to say to the grown-ups, "I saw a beautiful house made of rosy brick, with geraniums in the windows and doves on the roof," they would not be able to get any idea of that house at all. They would have to say to them, "I saw a house that cost £20,000 or dollars." Then they would exclaim, "Oh, what a pretty house that is!" And that's a lovely colorful house displaying geraniums. Geraniums are those flowers, those fuchsia and red flowers. Just so you must say to them, "The proof that the little prince existed is that he was charming, that he laughed, and that he was looking for a sheep. If anybody wants a sheep, that is a proof that he exists." And what good would it do to tell them that? They would shrug their shoulders and treat you like a child. But if you said to them, "The planet he came from is asteroid B612, then they would be convinced and leave you in peace from their questions. They are like that. One must not hold it against them. Children should always show great forbearance toward grown-up people. What does it mean? Children should always show great patience toward grown-up people. And that's grown-up shrugging in disbelief. But certainly, for us who understand life, figures are a matter of indifference. I should have liked to begin the story in the fashion of the fairy tales. I should have liked to say, once upon a time there was a little prince who lived on a planet that was scarcely any bigger than himself, and who had need of a sheep. To those who understand life, that would have given a much greater air of truth to my story. For I do not want anyone to read my book carelessly. I have suffered too much grief, which means pain, in setting down these memories. 6 years have already passed since my friend went away from me with the sheep. If I try to describe him here, it is to make sure that I shall not forget him. To forget a friend is sad. Not everyone has had a friend. And if I forget him, I may become like the grown-ups, who are no longer interested in anything but figures. So you see, the author is telling us that losing a friend is a very sad business. So we should try and take care of our friends. We should try and always find the time for our friends, shouldn't we? Now I want to show you the pictures, actually 2 pictures. One is about a grown-up telling a story. In picture number 1 on the left, the grown-up is starting a story, and the listeners don't look very interested. But in picture number 2, the grown-up, another one, is showing figures, which means numbers in a graph, and the listeners look much more interested. It is for that purpose, again, that I have bought a box of paints and some pencils. It is hard to take up drawing again at my age, when I have never made any pictures, except those of the boa constrictor from the outside and the boa constrictor from the inside, since I was 6. I shall certainly try to make my portraits as true to life as possible, but I am not at all sure of success. One drawing goes along all right, and another has no resemblance to its subject. You see, because the author was discouraged from picking up painting at an early age, he forgot about it, and now he no longer knows how to draw. That's him trying it anyway, giving it a try. I make some errors too, in the little prince's height. In one place he is too tall, and in another too short, and I feel some doubts about the color of his costume. So I fumble along as best I can, now good, now bad, and I hope generally fair to middling. Average. In certain more important details I shall make mistakes also, but that is something that would not be my fault. My friend never explained anything to me. He thought, perhaps, that I was like himself, but I, alas, do not know how to see sheep through the walls of boxes. Perhaps I am a little like the grown-ups. I have had to grow old. So the author is again reminding us that grown-ups sadly tend to lose their imagination, and that is not right. Have you enjoyed that? Okay guys, now on to phonics. sounds. So the first phonogram we've come up with today is SH. SH makes one sound. Sh. Sh says, SH says sh, as in Turkish, should, sheep, shrug, show, shell, fashion. It's not difficult, is it? What about the word should? Should is a verb. When do we use should in English? Well, in 3 instances, we use should to give advice. You should stop eating ketchup. But why? Because it's not healthy. We use should to ask for advice. Should I have cake for dinner? And we also use should to show obligation. Now, obligation here means moral duty. It means an obligation which doesn't come from the outside, from other people. It comes from inside. It comes from the knowledge of good and bad. You should always respect your parents and your teachers. Why? Because it's right to do so. That's an example of a moral obligation. Also, if you give respect, you will get respect. So you should always give respect. Now, WH. WH makes 2 sounds, W and H. WH says W as in which, what, and when. For example, also where. But WH says H as in who. Now, all of these highlighted words, of course, were in the chapter, as always. What about this picture? Now, this picture shows what you know already, question words. Question words in English usually start with WH. Who is for a person? What is a thing or an action? When is for time? Where is for places? Why is the reason something happened? And how, written HOW, is a number or the way something is done. I want to add something else. Remember, we also have which. When do we use what and when do we use which? Now, which is used if you are choosing between a limited number of items, whereas what is used if you have a wide range of choices. Examples. Which shoes should I wear? Which shoes should I wear? The black ones or the blue ones? Now, I'm choosing here between 2 pairs of shoes, right? 2 items, not a lot. But if I, in the morning, imagine yourselves in the morning, opening your closet and looking at all your clothes and saying, what should I wear today? Is it hot or is it cold outside? Now, you don't only have 2 or 3 pieces of clothing, right? You got a lot, so you should use what. Okay? And the last one. Now, remember I told you before that phonograms in English can be made up of 4 letters, and they can make up to 6 sounds. OUGH makes 6 sounds. OUGH says O as in bought and thought, which are the simple past forms of buy and think. OUGH says O as in dough, like Play-Doh. OUGH also says F as in rough. OUGH also says ow as in plow and drought. OUGH also says uff as in cuff and trough. But OUGH sometimes says oo as in through. Now, bought, thought, and through are in the chapter. Okay, so check them up. Now, this is a picture of a man looking through a magnifying glass. Before I leave, just remember that phonograms ending in GH like AUGH, EIGH, IGH, and OUGH are used only at the end of a base word or before the letter T. The GH is either silent or pronounced f. Okay, guys? That's it for today.